Greetings, gamers. It is I, Adam the Ant, here with another Magic Legends video, and this is a deck tech on my current Azorious Angels build. Now, Azorious Angels, of course, you can build this many different ways. My main is a Sanctifier, so I have some benefits of being a white mage, if you will, with some healing, and I really enjoy the well, let's just talk about the build and then we'll talk about why I enjoy it. So starting off here, we are currently at an 835 loadout score, which is decent as I'm climbing up the ranks. Level 43 is my Planeswalker level. 30 is the cap, but you still continue to gain levels to, increase your gear score, etc. Sort of end game content, if you will. So you might not have all the cards or the artifacts and stuff like that. The one difficult thing about this game is you're going to be getting your own drops and your own sort of loot. So you'll have to make do with what you have, but I will show you my build, and hopefully if you like it, you can move towards this sort of thing, or use the best equipment you have to come as close as you can. So to talk about the actual deck first, let's look at how I have it built. I have 5 creatures in this deck, and that of course can vary, but I do think it's a creature-centric game, although I have seen quite a few builds that are... people have talked about building more spells and card advantage and cycling through those spells rather than relying on creatures, especially when the content becomes really powerful. Creature management can be a little tricky, keeping them around, especially when mobs are dropping AoEs or have status effects and are doing like because your creatures don't have the ability to move outside of things like volcanic area effect sort of dots and things like that. They just won't be smart enough to move aside and let those things expire. They'll just stand right in the middle of them and get burnt down. So sometimes creatures, especially with because they're controlled by the AI and not a person, where we can move out of hazardous areas and sort of use evasion tactics and survive against various strategies, the AI just blindly moves forward. So I understand how creature builds can seem frustrating. You have to bring up their defenses really high. You have to maybe find modifiers to protect them. But me personally, so far, at least at my gear score, or whatever you call loadout score, I'm able to keep my creatures alive. Maybe it helps that I'm a Sanctifier, and so far I've been having a pretty good time with these creatures in particular. So let's talk about them. Angel of Vengeance, of course, big health. We've got the Light Piercer Angel, decent DPS and some AoEs. Also, sorry about this, to go back to the Angel of Vengeance, the on summon gives me about just under 6k damage, and that's an area effect. Those sorts of ETB effects to me are very useful, because when I have to recast creatures, when they sometimes stack in my hand, I still get a benefit from casting them. The Griffin has a great amount of health, so defense is very survivable, and also a special ability to knock back. So it's sort of a crowd control as well. The Fiend Slayer gives me lifelink, which helps with some of my abilities, and a charge, which is decent as well. And then a Chain Warden, which again, ETB, stunning foes at the location, which is a pretty decent area for 4 seconds. Good for like groups of skeletons or when you're getting swarmed. And he also does use his chain ability periodically as well, which it looks like the same ability, but it's a special ability that damage to foe and stun it for 2 seconds. So it doesn't have the area effect, but it's still decently a crowd control creature. And being a 1/4 has again, if you notice, all my creatures have a pretty good amount of health. So with that being said, let's move on past the creatures, and you also notice they're all white creatures. Now, originally I had, because of my equipment, I have a lot of white creature defense buffs. If you have defense buffs or different buffs for creatures that go into blue creatures, you could probably get more blue creatures. For me, being a Sanctifier, having lifelink on a couple of creatures, and some of these ETB abilities, I personally like this. If I was going to get rid of any creatures, it might be the Light Piercer, even though the Light Piercer has been one of my favorite angels in the early game. I believe that the Light Piercer is probably one of my weakest creatures now, so feel free to swap that out for something different you choose. I just like to have multiple angels in my deck, but I might, if I get a better angel, like if Lyra exists in this game, or some other Sarah angel or something that it might be cooler, I might swap it out. Or I might swap this out and have all angels, because angels are just cool. All right, moving on from the creatures, we'll talk about the white spells, and then we'll talk about my newest edition, which is a blue splash, and all you blue-white mages, rejoice. All right, let's talk about the remaining white spells. Most of them are, well, I've got one big area effect damage spell, Heavenly Assault, which is like, I guess like a fireball. I don't really know. It just does a lot of damage in a big area. I'm a fan of this spell, especially with the build that I have. I wanted a high casting cost sorcery, and we'll talk about why later, but it's just a big, big explosive spell that just does damage. Not very versatile in the grand scheme of things. If you want to make this another heal, that's probably good. If you're looking to support a team and get more heals, this wouldn't be a bad idea, but my build, I wanted to have a balance of more damage and be able to kind of sweep and support the DPS. So if you're going for a focus role, then this might not be the card. But the Healing Recall, one of the best, at least in my opinion, one of the best healing spells in regard to a creature build that you can have, for a number of reasons. One, it heals you and all your creatures. Now, that's not saying that it helps your teammates at all, so not really necessarily a great team build. But when it comes to soloing content and keeping my creatures alive, the other thing that I find hugely beneficial about this spell is that when you cast it, all of your creatures come to your side. So when they're spread out for various, when they're just kind of doing their own AI pathing and grabbing different mobs, and everything's kind of chaotic and everyone's spread out and you don't know what your team is doing, you can recall them to your side and start focusing fire on one enemy. They tend to repath their whatever their aggro or what they're targeting. They should be targeting the opponent that you're targeting, and kind of just reassess or regather, regroup the whole party and get everyone to be on the same page. So I find Healing Recall to be huge for that specific role. Next, the other heal that I have is just a simple 3 casting cost, 5-second heal, and it pops off a burst of healing every second. Now, this is not bad for teaming, because if you tell your team to stay near you and you watch the little mini map and make sure that you are in a proximity of your friends, then the burst healing goes off and protects them as well. And it's not bad. I mean, a little over 15k every second for 5 seconds seems to be enough to keep people alive for in those dire situations. It's pretty nice, and it's pretty cheap as far as sorceries go when you need a quick heal for your group. And we talked about that one. Let's talk about the blue spells. So the blue spells, and I apologize, they're not in any really good order. You have to do you can't just move them around on this list. If I was doing it the way my brain wants to do it, I would put everything in order of casting cost, similar to where I have the creatures here. So, but you have to put them in you can't put them in later. You have to put them in a very specific order. When you drop them in the bar, they just drop in the first one you drop all the way to the last. So I apologize if that bothers people. It bothers me too. I just can't rearrange it without it takes too much effort, put it that way. Okay, so let's talk about the spells. Let's start with the highest end. The big 6 casting cost spell that I have here in blue is Phantasmagoria, which is a cool dragon, spectral dragon, if you will. I don't really know why they call this Phantasmagoria. The The animation is fantastic. It's really fun. It's a big dragon that screams at everybody. And what you're getting is a hazard location, a pretty big one at that. And anything inside that takes a moderate amount of damage over 10 seconds. 10 seconds is kind of a long time, but because it creates a greater weakness hazard, and it'll also improve the amount of damage that those units are taking from other sources. So that's pretty fun. And then you get to get the cool roaring dragon and a big area that's affected. Next, we have the tornado, which is again a hazard, which is a moving hazard, and that creates a swirling wind of, well, it's a tornado, and it pulls units into it, does a, I guess a moderate to low amount of damage over the course of 5 seconds, but the interesting thing is it grabs a lot of those units and puts them in a small clump. So great for supporting when you're trying to group everyone together and then blast them with AoEs. I find this to be a fantastic sort of, I guess you could say, crowd control sort of ability. And last but not least, I am trying out Psionic Shatter just for the damage that it does. One of the higher damage spells, instantly doing almost 50, well, a little over 53k damage. Also, the critical, it deals additional damage to foes affected by a control effect, which would be a control effect equals anything that's affecting their I don't know how to really describe it. Control effects, there's quite a few of them in the game. It should be anything that hinders movement. This one it creates a hazard, and foes inside it pulled into the tornado. I believe that creates a status effect of control. Same thing with this condition. Let's read it again. Control effect. Maybe I need to know more about what control effects are, but if you know what they are, then it's extra damage. Can't be too bad. A lot of things, especially in blue, do affect creatures with the control effect, but sometimes this game is not very clear with some of the keywords, so we might have to look more into that. How often am I doing this additional 50% damage? Hard to say. Even if that's not the case, 53k damage is pretty good, and it's a line too, so it affects multiple targets. You just have to be a little creative and make sure you get the most targets as possible. But I like it. Would this be replaced? Sure. It's another 3-drop or 3 casting cost spell, but maybe it can be something else if we want to delve into maybe an additional heal with the fact that you're a sanctifier. Lots of things you can do. But I like this particular build. I'm having fun with it. And last but not least, sorry, probably the most important blue card in the build right now is Tolarian Winds, and this is a fantastic ability. You'll notice in the game that you get stuck sometimes depending on your draws, and what will happen is you'll either have a bunch of spells in hand and you need to get rid of them so you can cast creatures, or the opposite, you'll have all creatures on the board and you'll have all creatures in your hand without the ability to cast any spells. And if that happens, Tolarian Winds is a perfect way. Did I pronounce it differently both times? Tolarian and Tolarian. Either way, tomato, tomato. You are going to discard all your spells, then draw that many spells. So you replenish your hand, and you have also on top of that, benefit bonus is 6.5 seconds of lesser swiftness, which makes you move quicker. And a lot of times getting out of harm's way and moving out of hazardous areas is the most important thing you can do to stay alive. So Tolarian Winds covers both those things. You get new spells, and you get to kind of boost your speed out of a hazardous situation. So really happy with this spell. One of the best ones. It really changes the dynamic of the gameplay and makes, like anything in Magic, when you're drawing cards and replacing cards in your hand, you have more options, and that gives you a really good feeling. So with that being said, that's how this deck works. If you have other suggestions, of course. The idea of this game is to deck build and try new things out. I've built 3 different versions of Angels now. I started with Celestia Angels into Orzhov Angels, and now this is my Azorious Angels. So I'm really happy with the fact that I can be consistent with the Angel package, but then also splash and try different different colors and sort of improve the deck every time. And I'm really happy with this build. It's been really getting me. It feels like the game gets easier and easier as I level up by trying these new spells. And this right now is one of my favorite builds. So if you enjoy it, there's no Yorian in the game yet, but I consider this sort of a Yorian build. Now let's talk about my personal equipment in the loadout, which makes all of these things work better synergistically. When we go to my artifacts, we start out with a Draconic Flux. Now this is just, for me, it's just so much fun to have a giant Shivan Dragon hit the board. I can hit multiple Shivan Dragons. Right now I'm at rank 15 with this one, and it gives me a 6/6 red dragon at a pretty good amount of the time if I'm casting those big bomb sorceries. So the biggest sorceries I have will often trigger the dragon, and when it comes into play, it's just a giant creature. Now I could be happier with it's only around for 15 seconds, and it tends to need to wake up. For like the first 5 seconds, it seems to just sit there. I don't really know why it's not really that active, but I just blame it on summoning sickness. Eventually, it starts to either breathe fire or attack my enemies, but it does seem like it wastes a lot of time just, yawning and stretching, and I don't really know why. But overall, it's still a blast. Now, I have plus 188 red mana creature health, which I think makes it tougher than a 6/6. Maybe it's a 6/8. I don't know. But it still feels like a really fun drop when it happens. So I like this Draconic Flux. Until I get another better legendary artifact, I'm really happy with the way this feels. Next, my greater artifacts. These things like I've got white mana creature potency, which of course makes my white creatures tougher, or not tougher, sorry, more powerful. And so I like this. The bonus of the enchantment spell I don't leverage because I currently do not have any enchantments in the deck. This might change later, and but it's not really the reason I have the journal. It is level. Let's see here. Affects an additional target for each creature. So if I get it to level 20, it might be better. If I have some enchantments, maybe that'll change in the future. Right now, it is what it is. Aegis Charm. Now this is pretty fun, although I do want to get this up to level 20 so I can get more time on it. 2.5 seconds is pretty quick, but the fact that it gives me 5,534 shield multiplied by the number of enemy creatures within 10 feet seems a little bit powerful. I don't tend to take a lot of aggro, but it's a very tanky item, and I feel like it's more powerful than it looks. But it's hard to gauge it, right? Because I don't really know how often the shield is proccing and how much it's protecting me from enemies. But I feel like it just seems like a really powerful greater artifact. So I'm sure I could do better, though. That's just the way that the cookie crumbles as far as the drops you get. Last but not least, the lesser artifacts. And again, I'm kind of learning these and leveling them up as I get them. The number one that I like a lot is the white mana creature health and the chromatic creature potency, which means all of my creatures. Doesn't really have a bearing because I'm only using mono white creatures anyways, but that being said, I still like the creature health and a little extra damage. Shard of Power. Now, I just recently added this, but I'm really big on the Spark, which is the ultimate ability of the Sanctifier, which is a huge area effect heal and damage spell and a sort of a cone. And the fact that I can protect my teammates and my creatures, as well as doing a pretty reasonable amount of damage. And we also have chromatic sorcery potency, which helps my blue and white sorceries do extra damage. So I like this. Shard of Power seems to be really good for this build currently. Last is the Salve of Winter, which gives me control rating. This helps my control effects, which of course are mostly the blue spells, and also blue mana sorcery potency, so more damage out of my blue sorceries that I have in the deck now. So this was a recent addition when I went Azorious, and so far I like it. Over to the equipment. I think my equipment is pretty good, but again, a little bit generic when it comes to synergizing with the build. but we start off with the helmet, the Adjudicator's Diadem, more spark recharge so I can get off my ultimate more often. Primary potency, I'm a big fan of the Sanctifier's Primary. You get this bolt of white energy that splits into 3 on the 3rd shot. It feels like it does a little bit of like almost like a knockback in the sense that it can either stun or kind of push back the opponents a little bit, keeping them contained. Except for my occasional poor targeting or poor aiming, I'm really a big fan of the primary potency pluses. Max health potency, that's great too, but just overall, it seems to be a pretty powerful, reasonable piece of equipment. Next, my bracers. We've got when I activate my spark power, I draw spells equal to the power of the highest power creature you control, and that's pretty good. Draw spells equal to the power of your highest power creature control. This seems like an amazing ability. That's every time I do my spark power again, which is I try to do as often as possible. My secondary, I get a random creature, deals its power to nearby foes. That seems fantastic. 96% of the time I'm using my secondary, and I do try to spam my secondary as quickly as it's up. It is a cone heal and damage. So again, very similar to the ultimate, or the spark power, as they call it, I guess, in this game, but and then another 166 primary potency. So this is great for my build. Really enjoy this one. Off to one of the accessories, rings, talismans, bracelets, whatever you want to call them, crowns. There's a million things that follow these categories, but I'm using a Talisman of Symbiosis. When I drop below 30% health, strongest creature loses 25% of the hit points, and I get 65% of the life lost as healing. Sure, I don't know. But primary potency and spark recharge are really what I'm going for here. The boots are let's say that right. Adjudicator's Greaves. Drop below 50% max health, which can happen, and I get a copy of Judgment at your location. Please look up Judgment, because it does judgmental things. Must be good. Secondary potency, sure. Green mana resist, fine. It's okay. It is what it is. The other accessory I have is primary potency. In addition, primary potency and secondary potency. Well, look at that. It just boosts up my things. Not anything more exciting than that. Last but not least, my Mythic Slayer's Plate. Yes, I have a Mythic drop as a chess piece. Now this, again, is one of those Mythics that seems, I don't know, it just seems sort of okay. It is not particularly synergistic, but it does give me a chance every time I use my secondary. The chance is 100% that my weakest creature will gain +4/+2. That's got to be good. And whenever it dies, if it was human, I get a 1/1 white spirit creature for a whole 60 seconds. Okay, hold on. Whenever this creature dies, if it was a human, create a white 1/1 spirit creature token for 60 seconds or 15 seconds. Okay, I had to process that. What? Okay. So it's very important to look at the punctuation. Thanks, Magic the Gathering. And they did it pretty well. So the weakest creature gets +4/+2, 15 seconds. Whenever it dies, if it dies within that 15 seconds, you get a white spirit creature for 60 seconds. So you have so 100% of the time I activate my secondary, I'm going to have a 15-second buff to my weakest creature. And then, if it dies within that 15 seconds, then I get another white creature for 60 seconds. Sure. That seems okay. If I drop below 3 mana, which seems to happen a lot, then I have a 72% chance that I'll gain 3 white human tokens for 20 seconds. Now, these dudes look like farmers with hoes or plows. I don't really know farming tools, so someone can correct me, but I like to say hoes. So 3 dudes come in with 3 hoes, and they help me out in whatever, however they can, however a 1/1 white human token can. But it's fun to see extra bodies on the board. Plus, they take sometimes enemy targets targeting them is always good. And last but not least, the ability of 193 additional secondary potency. Yeah, can't be bad. So that's how all of my equipment breaks down and all of my artifacts. The traits that I have, I did currently get an additional trait, which may or may not be great, but it seems like it's decent enough. The Aether Regression gives me +1/+1 for every creature in my deck for the first 10 seconds it summons. And of course, Ward of the Sanctifier is the sort of standard Sanctifier trait. Whenever you heal an ally, that target gains shield, equal to 5% of its maximum health for 10 seconds, and it can stack 5 times. This is really good, especially when you add more heals to the deck and you want to be a support build. Really, the shield is pretty fantastic. Really helps your team become more survivable. And that's it. That is the deck. Hope you enjoyed this deck building tutorial. Of course, the intention here is to try new cards out. If you have different cards and you want to make changes and sort of optimize the build with your equipment and your artifacts, then definitely that's how it works. And in the future, I'll do some runs with this build so you can kind of see it in action. I just wanted to make this a build guide at first. All right, back to the realm, and you enjoy yourselves. Have a wonderful time playing Magic Legends. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more, or if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Be happy to answer questions and try to make more content for this game. I'm having a blast playing it. It's a very casual and fun way for me to involve myself in the Magic universe, being a planeswalker. And let's see if we can find a friend over here. Recently, I've discovered that we have Sparky. Look at this. All you arena players can be happy that there is Sparky in this game, just chilling out, hanging out over here. You can have a dance party with Sparky or just chill out with him. And hopefully you find Sparky in your realm and you can have a new best friend. All right, with that, have a great rest of your week and enjoy Magic Legends and anything else you might be playing. Enjoy your gaming. Take care.